Hello, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. I am your host, Roy Kessel, and today we are very excited to have with us a special guest. We have Steve Pindar. Steve is the founder of Roberto's Kids, does amazing work collecting sports equipment and distributing that all over the place. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Roy. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're excited to have you share your insight and everything that you've done with Roberto's Kids with us. We're going to spend a lot of time on that process, but I want to take you back to your childhood and talk about what first got you excited with sports.
Oh, I was one. I live in upstate New York. Literally, Cooperstown is in my backyard, so baseball is very, very popular here. I was one of the little kids who played whatever comes first, grasshopper baseball, and little league baseball, etc. But I've always liked all sports. But if someone said to me, "Boy, you need to pick a favorite for us, Steve," it would most definitely be baseball.
So what was your first experience with baseball that you remember? When was the first time your eyes lit up and you had that passion?
Oh boy. First time I remember, I can go back as far as I think the youngest they would let them. I don't know how old that would be, 7, 8 years old, whatever level of ball that was here in our community. It was pre little league. Of course nowadays there's minor league, little league, there's major league. This was before all of that. So I was just a little tyke at the time, and I do remember that. I remember liking it very much from the very first time.
And so as you started playing, what was your position? What did you like playing as a kid?
Outfield.
And what attracted you to the outfield?
I don't know if it's anything special other than the fact that I liked patrolling out there. I preferred center field over anything else.
So as you're going through, like you said, you grew up near Cooperstown, you played baseball growing up. Where did that take you for college? How did that impact your decision on colleges and your next steps?
I actually stayed near my community for college. I grew up in a family auto parts business, and I was in it. My golly, once again, from the time that I was a little guy, I was helping out long before I was on the payroll, and I was already involved with the business, so it was important. I went to college and worked as well at the same time.
And then what was your next step when you were done with school? You said you were working part-time at the family business, and
I stayed in it for quite a while. It was owned by my grandfather. Then my father bought it, etc. And I stayed in it until my parents were ready to retire. And then we all agreed that it was best to sell it. So they actually sold the business, and then I moved along after that.
So you stayed there for a while, and I know that's not the same business you're in now. So tell us how you got into the work that you're doing now.
I've been into, when people we chat about people, what'd you do your career? I think at some point in time I've done retail and wholesale and whatever you want to call it, nonprofit or human services work. I stayed in. When I left the auto parts business, I actually went to work for someone who had been one of the customers, and I stayed there for years. And then not too long after that, I ended up working in human services and found out that was really what made me tick. What I felt that the most worthwhile for me, what I should be doing. I worked for the local community action agency, and I supervised the homeless program, their food bank, et cetera, et cetera.
So how did you first get involved with the Hall of Fame?
I due to the fact that they're so close, I've had friends there for years and years. I didn't actually go to work there. I volunteered there probably 2 years in the I don't know, maybe 2015, 2016, I volunteered. They have a nice core group of volunteers who would work at Hall of Fame Classic weekend or induction weekend. And then they actually called me up one day and said, we a lot of our summer staff are, comprised of college students, et cetera, and they've all gone back, and we've got some openings for part-time. Would you be interested in it? My answer was yes. At that time, I was involved in baseball because we had minor league ball here in our community. Oh boy, from 1960, and my community being Oneonta, sorry, we had minor league ball here from 1966 until 2009. 1966 until actually 65. First year was Red Sox in 65. 66 was Yankees. I might be off by a year there, and I'm sorry. And then there was Yankees until 1998, when they moved the team to Staten Island, and then Detroit Tigers came in. New York Penn League, which unfortunately, moving forward, no one will be able to follow it all because it's been done away with. When MLB made the change to contract a lot of teams, it hit the New York Penn League, I believe, the hardest, because it just about took out all the teams. So there is no New York Penn League anymore. It's a short season, 76 game season. They start in the middle of June and they go through Labor Day. So I worked for the Tigers 1 year before they moved to Connecticut, and then our area became a good location for collegiate summer league ball, just like the Cape Cod League or the New England League, et cetera, et cetera. The smaller markets that used to be great for minor leagues, things have changed through the years, and those smaller market ballparks became very enticing to collegiate ball. So from 2010 until 2015, I was the GM of the team here. I left there to become the president of the league. Actually, I was the president of the league for a couple of years, and then I moved on to the Hall of Fame.
You got a pretty strong background on the baseball side, obviously seeing it from a number of different angles, both as a player growing up through high school, and then going and involving the whole process with being a GM and running a league. You got to see a lot of different aspects. What was your favorite role, if you could choose to go back to one of those roles?
My favorite role was some special night. I probably during that time frame, probably my favorite memories were special nights that we would have at the ballpark, promotional nights. Just they're very, very nice. The Oneonta Yankees / Tigers / Outlaws, which is what they are now, play their home games at a field called Damaski Field, which is actually one of the oldest fields in the United States. It dates back to 1906. Very, very old historic ballpark. Babe Ruth played there in 1920 on one of his barnstorming tours, and it seats about, well, it doesn't anymore. They've torn the grandstand down since I left, but when I was there, it seated about 4,000 people, and it was just such a nice feeling when you would have 3,000 or 4,000 people in there for a special night, where if you're honoring somebody, et cetera. And also, every now and then, a former minor league player would come back. Somebody might be in the area. One evening that comes to mind is when Al Leiter was there. Al Leiter was in this area because his son was playing at one of our tournaments that we have in this area every summer. And I had a friend who knew Al, and said Al had played for the Oneonta Yankees on 2 different seasons. Would he be interested in coming to the ballpark? And I explained that the man who owned the team when Al played here was still alive, and Al didn't bat an eyelash. He said, absolutely. He came, he threw out the first pitch. He made himself very approachable. He sat in a box seat behind in the grandstand, and didn't turn away anybody's photo op, autograph, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't stay the entire game. He probably stayed to the 6th inning or so, and the only reason he left was because his son at the tournament had a game coming up that evening. So those things would happen from time to time. You get somebody who all of a sudden, will pop into the ballpark and, hey, I used to play here, or I played on a team that played their away games here, et cetera. And they just want to see what the ballpark looked like. It was nice.
Well, it's always great to hear the stories, because you take the people who have a passion for a sport and they really want to give back. And if we give them the mechanism and the opportunity to do that in a meaningful way, as I say, I think it's a mistake when organizations only try to engage the athletes in what I call celebrity functions, meaning signing autographs, taking photos, playing in golf outings, going to fundraising dinners, instead of engaging them with the actual cause and letting them see the energy, the important work that goes on. So as you went through all of this work and the varied background in the baseball world, what did that look like in terms of your vision for launching Roberto's Kids? Where did that come from?
My wife and I went to the Dominican Republic for the very first time in 1997 as part of our churches would send short-term mission teams down. And 2 years later, 1999, our local Little League called me up and they said, we've got some equipment that we no longer need. It's usable, but we just don't need it. We don't want to throw it away. We know you and your wife have been active in the DR for a couple of years where baseball is extremely popular. Would you like it? I said, sure. So it kind of went from there. From 99 until 05, we were a family that did this. We would collect the stuff on this end. Our luggage to go to the DR would be small carry-on, and we would take the equipment. Our allotted luggage would be duffel bags, which we would take down with us and distribute on the other end. We did that until 2005. And in the fall of 2005, I said to my wife, as great as this is, because by then we had outgrown the taking on the plane with you. We were probably up to 3 or 4 times a year. And I said to my wife, as great as this is, I still feel like this is the tip of the iceberg. It just, there's so much stuff that has got to be out there, and people would love to donate it. It's just sitting in their closet or in the attic, etc. And I did not work at the hall then, but because I'm local, I had friends there, and I reached out to the Hall of Fame and told them that I'd like to expand on what I was doing. And they put in the round holiday time of 2005, they put me in touch with the Clemente family. I met Roberto Jr. and Luis in January of 2006 at an event that they were going to be at in New York City. And gosh, the rest, as they say, I guess, is history. The Clementes do not have any official role in Roberto's Kids, but I'm very, very fortunate that I could call them close friends. Through the years, we've done a lot of stuff together. And I like to think that when they need us, we're there for them, and vice versa. I know that when they need us, they're there for us. So one thing led to another, and fast forward to now. When we first started out, we were strictly Dominican Republic and then Puerto Rico, and then we would add on a country whenever I knew that we successfully just had a successful system of distribution for that country. And so fast forward to now, we're in a non-pandemic year, we're distributing about 50 tons a year. And Latin America, Central America, Africa, Asia, I don't want to sell anything short. It's literally all over the world. I had a reporter a couple years ago ask me if things had gone beyond my wildest dreams. And my answer then was no. If I was asked again today, I would say yes. Sometimes our equipment is going as far away now as India and Russia. We just had a shipment end up in Bhutan, and I hope I'm saying it correct. correctly, Bhutan. And I did not know where it was. I admit it. I looked them up. It's in southern Asia and the eastern Himalayas. And I did a quick Google distance and found out that from me to them was about 7,500 miles. So I now believe that things have gone beyond my wildest dreams.
Well, it sounds like you're doing amazing work collecting that equipment and getting things together. Um, you know, I'd love to see what we can do as a network to help expand that and
Right.
let you dream even wilder and see how many more people we can reach. Because as you said, there's an incredible amount of equipment that's out there. There's an incredible amount of
right.
used sports equipment that truly, in a sense, litters garages around the country that could be put to much better use,
You're
both within the United States and abroad.
right. You're 100% right, Roy. It's the ultimate win-win. We got people that would be happy to get rid of we've got people there, as you just said, there are people that would be thrilled to donate what they have. Number one, it's not cluttering up their garage anymore. With that goes the feeling that the donor gets of, wow, I did something nice for someone less fortunate. And then on the other end, we've got the recipients who had literally nothing. People say to me, what do you take? What don't you take? And I explain to them that we are, I believe, one of the easiest organizations to donate, that there is. As far as what we want, it has to do with baseball. Yep. From the top of the head to the bottom of the feet, jerseys, belts, pants, socks, cleats, and then everything goes with the game. Balls, bats, gloves, catcher's equipment, bat bags, pitching rubbers, bases, and umpires equipment, on and on and on. Well, what about the condition? And I said to folks, two things, and it's very, very simple. If a pair of pants has a little teeny hole in the knee, absolutely, we'll take it. On the other hand, if a pair of pants, it has a hole big enough that you wouldn't send your child out on the field in those pants, please don't. Please throw them away. My theory there is, out of respect, I don't want a child in a third world country who's maybe playing right now in his underwear to put on a pair of baseball pants that has a big hole in the knee. Number one, out of respect for the child. Number two, I don't want him to start sliding, and then obviously he's got a problem. The same thing with a batting helmet. If it's a batting helmet which is functional, but might be missing a piece of foam or something, we'll repair it, send it to us. But once again, if you've got a helmet that is structurally unsound, please just throw it away. With the same theory being, I don't want a child in a third world country who's never worn a helmet in his life to stand there and think it's okay to get beamed, and obviously then the helmet breaks and he's got some serious injury. Other than that, we take it all sizes, all ages, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and as you said, there's so many different conditions and many athletes and organizations around this area are, in a sense, spoiled, have the luxury of having equipment that's at brand new, higher level, and I need the newest bat every 2 years. I need new equipment. And there's truly nothing, quote unquote, wrong with the old stuff, other than that it's not the newest and best of what's out there.
Right.
And even things that truly are not in fantastic condition, a lot of those types of equipment and a lot of those types of things are something that an individual in the community where they don't have any equipment would be thrilled to have. So even if it is something that needs to be pieced together, or a glove that needs a little bit more stitching pulled back together, those are all things that can be done to fine tune it.
Right on. You got it, Roy. A glove, give a glove a little TLC, and off we go. And the same thing. It's normal, and I know that you know this, but it's normal here for Johnny wants to get the next year, he wants to get the new bat, and et cetera, et cetera. Or we'll get a question, from someone, well, will you take this bat? My son says it's dead. And the answer is yes, because once again, these are going to children who literally have nothing. And people ask me, well, have you seen it? I mean, I have seen it. I can tell people, and 100% surety that all the stories you hear about kids, I'll just say the DR, but it doesn't matter where it is, but stories you hear about kids playing from dawn to dusk with a broomstick handle or a stick for a bat, with a old plastic milk carton or a piece of cardboard fashioned out to be a glove, and with string, which is rolled up very, very, very tightly, to become a ball. Those stories are true, absolutely true. I've seen it many, 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 many times.
Well, you think about the concept of play, and kids want to play.
Right.
So if we don't have anything available, right, we're going to make it up. I remember
Right.
being a kid and you'd be somewhere and there wasn't a ball, right? You'd take a ball of socks, right? You'd roll up a pair of socks and you're kicking that around and you're throwing that around. You take anything that you can find and toss it around because you're going to be active and engaged. And
Right.
if you're fortunate enough to have a proper ball, all the better. But that's not going to stop us, right?
No.
We want to be out there. We're going to kick something around. So
Right.
you roll up and take whatever it is. And if it's a skinned soccer ball or something, if it's a baseball that's coming apart at the seams, as long as you can still throw it, catch it, hit it, we're going to be playing with it.
Exactly. Exactly right. Exactly right. I have a picture I share with people every now and then, taken in a very remote area of the DR. It was a little village that Peace Corps contacted me. We've worked with them many times in the past. A Peace Corps volunteer contacted me. And it just so happened that we had some equipment there in the DR, and I said, absolutely, you can, if you travel to so-and-so, you can have. And so they did, and they sent me pictures later on, and the little village was thrilled. And I shared the picture with people, and I said, what do you see in this picture? It was probably 3 boys. They were playing ball. They said, well, I see one boy, they're playing barefoot. I said, right. And they said, one boy is using like a broomstick handle for a bat. I said, exactly. And he said, that other kid seems to be using that look like a ball bucket, but a bucket for the glove because he didn't have one. So we take the bucket. I said, but what else do you notice? And most people don't notice it, but I said, you keep looking. And they said, I don't know what it is. I said, there are no electrical poles. There are no telephone poles. There's no nothing where and he said, people will say to me, I said, right. That means they have no electricity in their village. They just don't have it, so I've seen that. I've gone to the areas in the DR, before where you felt like for what we have here, you felt like you were traveling back to the 1800s, people getting around by horse, having no electricity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It literally is a different world.
Yeah, and one of the things that we also take for granted in many spots in this country, in the US, certainly not everywhere, is just having grass. That you've got a field where you've got some grass to play on,
Right.
and you've got what I'll call a proper dirt infield as opposed to just hard baked compressed dirt or concrete or whatever else is around.
Oh, you're 100% right. I've seen kids playing before where they've got grass, but they're also sharing their quote unquote field with cows. So you see, this thing is that, it's there, they adapt, and they're very, very happy.
So are the cows the outfielders, or are they serving as bases?
The cows seem to be scattered throughout. I don't know what position they're playing, if they're the opposing team, but I've seen many times where you've got kids and cows both.
So if you hit it off the cow, that's an out, right?
Or it could be a ground rule double. I'm not sure.
Well, it's always like the arguments you used to have as a kid playing ball of whether the ghost runner was going to score from second on a single or
exactly,
from first on a double, and
right.
playing pitcher's hand and everything else that goes along with it. And I think that's one of the challenges that we see, right, with play being taken out of a lot of the context where the word play sort of disappears and everything's over formalized and managed by the parents and organized, and the kids don't go out and really play in the same way as what you're describing that you see in the DR or Puerto Rico or in many of these other countries.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And so it's great that you're able to provide that type of forum and outlet for the kids to be able to have equipment and get back out there and play. We know that it's really crucial for them to have that activity. Sports is a great way to keep kids away from negative influences in any community, gangs, drugs, violence, any of the types of things that are out there. And
Mhm.
so having the opportunity to get some equipment that they wouldn't have, I'm sure lights up their eyes. When you go there and deliver, talk a little bit about the process of how you decide where you're going to deliver this equipment and what kind of reception you get.
Ah, great question. We have a screening process. Let me go back to 2009. No, that's not right. Let me go back to, excuse me, that's wrong. Let me go back to 1999, around 1999, 2000. I was at the MLB office in Santo Domingo in the DR, and that's when I first met a gentleman named Rafael Perez. He was the head of MLB in the Dominican for Latin America for years and years. He's now the head of the director of international player development for the New York Mets. He has been a wonderful and continues to be a wonderful mentor. And I had one of the very first conversations I ever had with him. He said to me, "Steve, I need to tell you something." He said, "I applaud what you're doing." He said, "You're doing great things." And he said, "As you expand through the years, there's something I want you to always remember." And I said, "Okay, whatever it is." He said, "Nothing will ruin your reputation quicker than if your items get in the wrong hands." Meaning, in a third world country, they could be used for what they're supposed to be used for, the children who need them, but they could also end up by a government official who might, if they get in the wrong hands, he might try to buy votes with them. If they end up in the wrong hands, someone could use them to buy drugs, et cetera, et cetera. So I've never forgotten what he told me, and it continues to stay with me, even today, and it will in the future. So we make sure we have a screening process in place for every country. Here's an example. If someone calls me up today or sends me an email today, let's say he's in the DR and it's a league I've never heard of before. I explain to them, okay, we would consider, we'd love to be able to donate to you. I said, please, and I give them a name of someone at the MLB office in the DR. And I said, please contact so-and-so and tell them about your organization. Okay. One of two things happens. I said, and I give the people that in the MLB office a heads up, you may hear from so-and-so from the so-and-so league. If the person never contacts them at all, then obviously they weren't legit, and therefore that's the end of that. Chances are, if they bother contacting MLB, they are worthy and legitimate. And then either the folks at the MLB office already know this organization and they certainly say, "Yep, Steve, they're worthy. Well, let's move ahead with a donation." Or sometimes they've actually been known to drive to one of the, if it's close proximity, they will go visit them to make sure they are who they say they are. So we've through the years developed a screening process where, we have, it's obviously not always MLB, but it could be a church, it could be a nonprofit organization. In the countries where we work, we have someone, at least one person on the other end who we trust implicitly, who we know will, we know that everything, if it moves forward, it will end up going to the people who need it, as opposed to in the wrong hands.
That's really important because, as you said, your ability to be effective needs to be
Right.
accepted by the community and coordinated with the community. Right. And so having a mechanism where that is sorted out and really in place is crucial.
I had an example of this again, and I don't mean to sound negative. I think I'm a realist here, and I love the countries. I love third world countries. I love what we do, but realistic, there is corruption, et cetera, et cetera. I had a man call me up, oh goodness, maybe 10 years ago. He was from Canada, and he didn't want to work with us. He just wanted advice. I said, that's no problem. That's what I'm here for as well. He said, well, I don't want to say the wrong airline. So anyway, one of the Canadian airlines would ship his donation for free to the Dominican Republic. And I said, great. I said, who do you have on the other end to assist you? And well, he told me who this, and he had somebody and he had somebody else. And I could tell through the conversation that he was maybe half listening to me. And I almost got the feeling that he was discounting what I was saying, as opposed to he knew what he was doing, et cetera, et cetera. So I got off the phone with him. That was that. And I gave my best advice. About a year later, the phone rang. And he explained who he was, and I didn't remember him. And he said, I called you about a year ago. I'm from Canada. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. How are you? I said, how did you make out? Well, he says, I owe you a huge apology. And I said, well, why is that, sir? He said, well, he says, I didn't really listen to you. And I basically thought I knew more than you did. And I said, uh-oh, don't tell me. He said, yeah. He said, once my items left for the Dominican Republic, I never saw them again on the other end. Nobody ever saw them again, which happens. Those things happen. I'm not, I know, once again, don't want to sound like a wet blanket or a pessimist, but those things do happen. He didn't have a system in place to make sure they got out the other end, got through customs, and got distributed on the other end. So you learn. And please, and then someone will say to me, "Oh, Steve, you're an expert." No, I am not an expert. If I am if I'm knowledgeable, it's only because I've been doing this for 20 years. My wife and I I've spent time myself where it's one step forward, two steps back, and off you go. You learn as you go.
Well, I think that's really an important lesson for all of us, right? We develop a certain amount of expertise, we start going down a direction, but none of us have all of the answers. And I think it's crucial, especially in this community of sport for good and sport for social change, of finding collaboration partners and listening to other people's experience, because especially when you go outside of the United States, right? The rules of the game are different in every single country.
Exactly.
Even a country like Canada, right? That we align with and we think that is, fairly close to what we're doing. But every country has different regulations. Every country has different culture and customs, and getting somebody on the ground that understands those things, that can help guide the process and the protocol of walking equipment in, because we've had other groups in our network that would say very similar things. They basically would throw it all in their bag and go play baseball exhibitions, and they would just quote unquote leave their bag
Right.
behind.
Right.
And their bag happened to have a lot more than they needed just for their competition, but that was the way that they got it in. And so I think that it's really critical as a message for other organizations to understand that none of us have all the answers. Be open to learning from partners and collaboration. There's an enormous impact that can be made collectively. So as you look ahead now, you've built up a really strong organization. What do you think were some of the biggest obstacles you faced, and a couple things that you wish you knew really early on that would have helped expedite how quickly you could get things done?
Oh, I wish that I knew earlier on just how severe the corruption could be in some of these countries. Even with the advice that Raphael gave me, we actually almost lost a shipment of equipment one time, and we thought we were dealing with someone who could be trusted. It was probably 15 years ago. We sent a shipment down, and it was probably 5 tons. And someone had put me in touch, someone who I trusted, who was a good friend, put me in touch with a Dominican government official. And we were planning a trip down anyway. And so we went ahead with our plans. And the official said, I want to meet. So we met him. uh, in Santo Domingo, and he wanted to take a bunch of pictures, etc. And he said, "You go back to," and then he said, "I'll make sure your items get through customs quickly and intact," which both are huge. And I said, "Okay." So we went back, and he said, "Call me tomorrow." We called the next day, and he was too busy to talk to us. We called the next day, and he had no idea who we were. We called the next day, and oh, yes, he remembered us. But in order to get our stuff out of customs, he wanted so many pesos and so many US dollars from us. And we don't do that. My wife, from the very first time somebody, thought that they could get a bribe from us, my wife has always stood fast, which I respect greatly, and said, "Nope, we're never going to pay a bribe, because if the word gets out that you pay a bribe, they'll expect one every time." So we literally, and then we had to give up. We had our plane reservations for to come back home. We came back home, and I had pretty much decided that all was lost. And it made no sense for me to spend the money for another plane to go back down to try. And so we thought, and I kept trying to find contact. And at the literally the 11th hour, I remembered I had a friend out in the Boston area who was Dominican, called him up, and as luck would have it, he actually was a friend of the president of the Dominican Republic. He made a call, and someone from the president's office called this government official and said to him, "You will take 100% of these people." He had hidden all the our stuff. He pulled it. It was out of customs. He had pulled it out of customs himself, and he had hidden it. And he was running for re-election that year, and he was literally going to buy votes with our equipment. And when this someone from the president's office called him up and said, "You will take 100% of these items to wherever these people, us, tell you to take them, and you will rent a vehicle, and you will do this tomorrow." And as it turned out, the very next day, all of the stuff showed up and was accepted by our trusted friends down there. So it can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody. No one's perfect, and we learned that time. And actually, a few years later, I was in a meeting with the Minister of Sports. Here in the United States, it would be like a cabinet position. We don't obviously here in the United States have a Department of Sports, but it's a cabinet. It would be a cabinet level position. And they actually said to me that understood that story about that official must have made its way through the Dominican government, because this gentleman knew all about it. And he said, "I'm really, really sorry you had that problem." And I thanked him very much. But those things happen. Unfortunately, they're fairly common.
Well, and you look around, those things happen in some formats, even in lots of places in this country, in terms of
Correct.
people wanting payments or fees or other types of compensation. And it may not be called or classified as a bribe, but it's effectively blocking the ability to get things done. So, now we're sitting here, hopefully the pandemic is winding down. We look like we're going to be hopefully mostly back to normal by the end of 2021 for most operational purposes. What's on your horizon for the next 3 years?
Well, right now, actually, to be very honest with you, Roy, right now, I am in the beginning stages of a capital campaign. We have to raise funds for shipping. Because of the pandemic, obviously, it slowed down to a crawl for us like it did everybody else. And we have more equipment stored around the United States than ever before. And so obviously we want to raise some funding. So when we are far enough along through the pandemic that we've turned the corner, as you just referred to, where we'll know that they'll be able to be accepted to the various countries, we'll be ready to ship whenever we can again.
Well, I want to congratulate you, Steve, on everything that you've done. I think it's been an amazing process. I look forward to collaborating and working with our task force to see how we can help expand those programs and both the collection of equipment, the distribution of equipment, and creating a support infrastructure to make that happen. So I want to put you on the spot for a minute here as we come to a close. We want to
Sure.
use our sports philanthropy superpowers, and we want to wave our magic wand and appoint you as commissioner of a sport. So tell us what sport you would like that to be.
Baseball.
So,
Surprise.
yeah, big shock based on all of the work that you're doing.
Almost fell out of
Uh,
your chair on that one. I know. You were so shocked.
So now that you're in charge, you've kicked Rob out of his office and
Yep.
you've taken over. What's your
Yep.
first course of action?
Actually, for me, it's a simple one. I would, if I could, I would restore minor league baseball back to its former state where you had somewhere between 160 and 170 teams. I never want to speak ill of Rob Manfred. I have met him before. He comes from Rome, New York, which is an hour north of here. I have felt badly, and anyone who knows me knows that how I feel about it. I felt very badly that he, in my opinion, gutted the minor leagues. As I said, I come from a small community in upstate New York, and there's a whole lot of them, and it's tough. It's tough to lose minor league baseball. People don't realize, not just to go to the games, but it's what it does for the economy. And it really hurts. It really, really hurts. So to be honest with you, that probably, if you did wave your magic wand and said, Steve, it's yours, I probably would do my best to reverse course on what he did to the minor leagues.
Well, there's no question there's an enormous impact minor league sports have in their communities. It really becomes the identity of a community. I hate seeing any sports franchise, minor league, major league, any level leave a city because it's got such a detrimental impact on what happens in that city. So I love that as a vision. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing more about Roberto's Kids, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Roy. I have to tell you, this is an absolute honor for me. I have the utmost respect for you and for your organization, and I really have enjoyed my time.
And we want to thank our listeners. Steve did a great job. I hope you've learned. I hope you find ways to support his efforts. We want to thank you for taking your time to join us today for the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. This is your host, Roy Kessel, signing off. Please remember to live generously.